and then I'll do the introductions. So, and I'll keep an eye on other people that are coming in as well so that we don't miss anybody. So welcome everyone. My name is Angela Rasmus and I am both a business mentor and a business consultant for DFK Australia and New Zealand, and today we have decided to put together some mini masterclasses that will help you with situations you're probably dealing with at the moment or facing at the moment that you haven't had to come across quite as much as you have in the past. With COVID-19, cutting a really interesting path through all of our businesses, we wanted to respond with some masterclasses that would help you in the moment. Now, just for to give you a little bit of housekeeping first, once you're in the room, if you could mute yourself, you'll be absolutely unmuted later if you've got some questions you want to ask, but just so that we've got a nice clear recording. So if you can just, you'll see down on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, there is a mute button which you can hit. And you will also see that in the middle of your screen, there is a chat box. Now, I'll be keeping an eye on that chat box. If there is a question that you have that comes up as Jo is presenting to us, then please type it in there because I'll be watching that for Jo. As a rule, we do tend to keep the verbal questions to the end to make sure that we've got time to get through the content for you. But if you have a thought, type it in because I guarantee that somebody else will have a similar question. So of course we do have Jo Hanlon here with us today. Now Jo has a business called Mind Your Ps, which is Mind Your People and many other things, and she has over 30 years of leading, coaching and mentoring individuals and teams that are right at the coalface each and every day, helping them navigate their way through challenging situations. And I think what we're facing at the moment definitely qualifies as a challenging situation. So today we are focusing specifically on how to handle difficult conversations. Now this came about because a lot of obviously the DFK firms are having to take care of business owners who are feeling the pressure of the unknown at the moment. But we also have people on the line who are clients of the DFK firm. So welcome to you as well. And we're sure the information we're sharing will be just as useful. So there's some key points that we'll be taking you through today, which is in terms of understanding who it is that you're dealing with on a call and how to respond to that so that there is a mutually beneficial outcome from that conversation. There's lots more that obviously Jo will be talking to you about, but that is the gist. And rest assured, you will also receive access to this recording, and also we'll be sending you out a 3-page summary document that takes these key points so that you can put them into action. So keep an eye on your email because that will be coming through to you later today. And you can also, obviously, if questions come up past this masterclass, you'll be able to pose those as well. So that's enough from me. I will hand you over to Jo, and I'll keep an eye on that chat box in case you have questions as we go along. So Jo, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and making time for us today. Over to you.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the masterclass, and thank you for asking me to participate in it. This is one of my favourite I guess subjects, and based on my life and the last 12 years, I was originally a nurse, so I had to have a lot of difficult conversations with people, essentially about things like life and death even, and then I was in sales and marketing, business management development for years, so that also brings up a lot of conversation, whether it's around sales objections, whether it's around product recalls and dealing with those, especially when dealing with a healthcare company, leading and managing my own teams, and also in the last 12 years, as Ange mentioned, in my own HR consulting and coaching company. And I'm called weekly, essentially, to assist my clients with difficult conversations on both personal and professional matters. So I need to preface my talk by saying I will be talking in some generalisations today, and due to time constraints and against my own advice, I will be making some assumptions about the situations you might be facing, so I do apologise in advance. Okay, so if we talk about the learnings that we're going to be focusing on today. Oh, and next slide. Alrighty, so we're going to be talking about understanding others and yourself better, about deep listening, asking smart questions, and setting realistic expectations. And these are all interconnected. Alrighty, so normal dynamics between human beings can be complex enough. And on top of that, as you've all experienced, to different levels. This whole COVID-19 thing has really just complicated the whole conversation, and it's really brought a lot of more pressures to bear. Our normal world has been tipped upside down, and for some, they're really enjoying that. They're having a lovely time out and learning and reconnecting with others, whereas others, it's their worst nightmare, and then there's everything in between. So if I'm reflecting on what some of my clients are telling me, and they are professional service firms, similar to DFK, some of them are, and some of the conversations that they are having, and you're obviously having, are really having to deal with stressed and angry clients and other stakeholders, I guess. If you look at it from their point of view for a minute, as you will no doubt appreciate, business owners, employers and individuals are dealing with a lot of uncertainty right now. And due to the mixed messages that we're continuing to receive from government bodies, many continue to struggle with really important and urgent short, medium and long-term questions and issues of some sort or another. And that continued uncertainty and mixed messaging can be very confusing for all of this. So I guess your client's stress is understandable and it's resulting in you having to deal with a number of conversations. And I can imagine sometimes that when that phone rings, you go, oh my goodness, what am I going to have to deal with now? Because it can be really hard to know what you're going to hear or be asked. Or if you're seeing that you've got repeat clients ringing in and you know you haven't actually got to what they've wanted you to do yet, that also can be very stressful. So if I want to talk about the first thing I want to talk about is knowing yourself and learning a bit about others and other styles can be really helpful in managing some of these and handling some of these difficult conversations. So as we know, conversations are verbal interactions between two or more people and often happen in the workplace because you guys have got knowledge and skills or products that other people are paying you to have that they need. When you have the added pressure, which is happening at the moment, of timelines and urgency to get things done, and again, as I mentioned, the changing information about what actually needs to be done, this can just increase stress if not managed well. This is for yourselves and for others. A Forbes article states that non-verbal cues convey between 65 and 93% of the actions between us all. Now that's an enormous amount of information that's passed. Generally we pick that up when we're face to face, but when we're not face to face and we're on the phone, it makes it really difficult. And especially when we are, or our clients are feeling very emotionally upset or anxious about things. So even online calls and things give you some context and some access to information, but not everybody. So one of the tools that I actually use to help me understand myself is this one called Disc here. So some of you may be familiar with these types of, I guess, work style preference models, and some won't. And if you are, that's fantastic, because this might just give you a bit of a useful reminder. Excuse me. I don't use DISC because I like putting people in boxes. That's not what it's about. But what it does, it just means that I can more clearly and helpfully appreciate the fact that we do have different priorities and motivators and fears and all sorts of things like that. So I'm going to go through these. Now, research has shown that most of us either use one of the styles most of the time, or we use a mixture of styles. And we can flip between the different styles depending on how comfortable we are in the situation and what is asked for. But if you're like me, I'm sitting at about 11 o'clock. If you use that as a clock face, so if I have to go and use a style down in this S section, for example, I get really tired of doing that if I have to do it for any length of time. So I guess one of the things that's important is I'm going to take you through the 4 styles. And I'm going to focus mainly on some of the fears that we have, because that often is what causes the most conflict. And we're also going to touch on some of the key strategies that might be useful for you to use. And as I go through, I'll give you a little bit of what we call a people reading exercise, so you can make a bit of a determination as to what situation or what part of what style this person is that you're talking to. Alrighty. So let's look at the top left corner of this. These people, and the dominance or the words are just a word chosen by the person who developed the model. For those that like details, was developed back in 1924 by a guy called William Marston. He was also the creator of Wonder Woman, for any of those that are actually part of Trivial Pursuit. So if you're wanting that question. Anyway, so the dominant style, how can we tell people maybe in this? If you look at the round white circles, these people are generally very active, they're generally fast-paced, they're assertive, they're dynamic, and they're bold. So they're going to, when they're talking to you, they're going to come across very strongly, they're going to be probably quite fast-paced, especially if they're anxious about something, and they're going to be quite blunt potentially. They're also going to likely to be asking you lots of questions. They're logic-focused, and they can seem to be sceptical about things. Now, if you're not that style, and your style is quite different, that type of behaviour may be quite confronting for you. So they can appear confrontational. They're very process focused, and the key things for them are going to be about timelines and what some of the best options are likely to be for their business. So what are some of the different ways we could communicate with people like this? One of the ways of dealing with these people is to find out what their main concerns are. Don't waste their time. Ask direct questions and get to the point. They don't want a long, drawn-out conversation. They will be expected to ask questions and will appreciate a realistic timeline. Even though they may not like what you say, they will respect it. They may push back and demand more from you. So it's really important for you to know what you can do and what you can't do and by when. So be honest and transparent, as this will help them know. As you can see, their fears there are loss of control, being taken advantage of, and being vulnerable. So if you can imagine, if you've got a client that is in danger of losing their business potentially, of being ripped off, or feeling or showing that fear and that vulnerability, that's a pretty scary place for these to be in. And that's why you will notice some of those bad behaviours coming out, or some of those behaviours that we can normally deal with will be more amplified. So, so those people, be direct, be clear, be honest, and be realistic with them, and they will respect that more. If you beat around the bush, you make promises you can't keep, and you're sort of trying to soften the message that you're giving to them, they won't appreciate that. So try not to deal with that. Try not to deal with them that way. The people on the right-hand side of the circle, these people, this style is called the influence circle. Now, these ones are more your social butterflies. These people are friendly, chatty, warm. They want to be everyone to be on the same page. As you can see there, they're motivated by social recognition, friendly relationships, and group activities. They're also very active, fast-paced, assertive, dynamic, and bold, but they're doing it from more of a warmer perspective, more accepting, more people-focused, more empathising and receptive. So their fears, as you can see, is social rejection, disapproval, loss of influence, or being ignored. Now, as you can imagine, if you've got clients of yours or their staff that have just been tipped out of the workplace or out of their comfort zone back to home, they can be worried that they're missing out on important information, and that's the same as not being able to come and see you guys and sit in front of you and have that conversation, which might be the way they generally like to get their questions answered. So if they're having to do this over the phone, just be aware that they're probably going to be feeling a bit disjointed and disconnected. So it's going to be really important for these people. Some better communication that you can maybe have with these people is to make your conversation with them frequent, to give them updates and expect them to want to have a bit of a chat. They will often need an ear and a sounding board to work through their issues, and they'll be keen to hear when they can expect to get the information. They also may ring you a number of times to get more information, and will need to feel that they're still valued. Oops. These people are on the steadiness quadrant. This is the bottom right of the circle. These people are also very people-focused. They're very receptive. They're very agreeable. They're the helpers amongst us. They're the ones that love to be able to feel valued by people, to give value to people, and they're also going to be very concerned about their team and what's happening to their team. So their fears, though, is loss of stability and sudden change. Well, as you can imagine, a lot of them will be feeling very destabilised at the moment because that change is just happening at such a fast pace. And Also, they don't want to be demanding or be seen to be demanding because they don't want to offend you guys. They want to keep you on side. So if they're wanting information that they need to help them run their business more effectively, you're likely to continue to hear from them a lot because they want that support themselves as well as being able to give it, but they don't want to bug you. So you're going to have to probably ask them lots of questions. Be prepared to take time with them to help them understand. They're not likely to ask all they need to. As I said, you will need to keep asking questions. They also rush less. They're a slower paced than the other two styles that we've already looked at. They are more calm, they're more methodical, and they're more moderate paced. And they also take longer to make decisions generally, just because they consider things more. So make sure you keep in contact with these people, take time, and really dig into what they're needing from you. The fourth style is conscientiousness, and this is in the clock. On the clock face, it's between 6 and 9 o'clock. These people are, again, very questioning, very logic-focused, objective, skeptical, challenging, ask lots and lots of detailed questions. Again, they're very thoughtful, calm, methodical, moderate-paced, and careful. These people are motivated by data, facts, and lots of detail. They'll ask you generally all the questions that they possibly can because they want to make sure they get it right. The fears for these people is getting it wrong, being criticised, appearing not to know the facts, and being sloppy. So they don't want to come across to other people who they may be supporting and giving them wrong information. So the information for these people is going to be providing fact sheets, giving them good data sources, and access to subject matter experts if that's going to help them. It's a great idea to provide the backup data, be clear and precise with them, deal in facts, not feelings. Don't expect them to want to chat to you about all their fears either but they're likely to be very worried. Try not to get caught up in long conversations with these people though that get too deep into the detail. They do love to share their own expertise. They love being seen as experts, and they may try and bog you down with long explanations about what they're doing already to solve their problems. So it's really about being very clear about the questions you ask and the information you need. So in summary about that, hopefully when I was going through that, and I know that I probably passed you through a lot of information, it was very quick. And as Ange said at the beginning, that information will come out to you on the document afterwards. So you'll be able to read back through that and reflect on the people that you may be having the most problem with. The reality, as I also mentioned at the beginning, you have a style as well as your clients have a style. So you're not just dealing with one style, you're dealing with your response and how you respond and how you react, hopefully respond to those people. So the difference between reaction and response, the more information you have about a situation and the pros and cons and the data, it allows you to respond rather than react. Reaction comes from a sudden bit of a shock or, oh gosh, I wasn't expecting that, and then you react. Whereas a response, if you thought about with the information they're likely, your clients are likely to ask you, and you have armed yourself with that up front, you're going to feel more in control of yourself. What often happens in professional service firms, there are a lot of S's and C styles, and entrepreneurs are often D's. So you're probably hearing a lot from these very direct and very blunt, very forceful people. So it really is about, okay, how can you, as an individual with your style, set yourself up to deal more effectively with that other type of person. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is listening, because it's not just about one of the key parts of interaction, and it's probably something that hasn't often been thought about or talked about, is listening. So this is about hearing, but did you actually hear what these people said? Is your mind full? And it's full, and we'll talk about this in a second. Or are you being mindful of the conversation that you are having? Your body's present, you may be sitting in the chair, but is your mind? So let's have a look. There's a guy called Oscar Trimboli, and he claims there are 4 types of listeners. I really love these. There's the lost listener. It's this person who's physically present, but mentally elsewhere. These listeners have their minds on their last job, the next coffee, the fight they had with their partner, or thinking about the last conversation that they had with this person. Anything but attending to this particular conversation that they're at right now. You've got the interrupting listener. These people are so focused on finding a solution to the problem that they finish the speaker's sentences, especially the better that you know the speaker, try to rush them along and listen to find a solution and get them off the phone so they can get back to the job at hand. This speaker does not get a chance to verbalise their issues, so they feel unheard and frustrated. And again, that's where a lot of, if we think about conflict, where conflict comes from, a lot of that's to do with unexpressed or unrealistic expectations. People who think or assume that they know what they're getting and don't get it, but if they haven't had the chance to actually say what they want and what they need, then that can be just as frustrating. There's the shrewd listener. The shrewd listener are also focusing on solving the problem. In fact, the shrewd listeners are so focused on solving the problem, they're inside their own heads and anticipating what the problem is and thinking about that rather than focusing on what the speaker is saying. Again, those people are just not there. And the last one is the dramatic listener. So the dramatic listener, they listen intently, but then they want to dig into every single detail there possibly is, whether it's relevant or not to the situation. And so it's all about them rather than actually about the speaker and what the speaker needs. Again, those types of people can be very frustrating. If you know dramatic listeners, I'm sure as I'm talking here, you're probably sitting there going, oh my God, I've been the lost, the interrupting, the shrewd and the dramatic. I'm sure we've all been there at various times, and sometimes all within 10 minutes. So it's really important to recognise that we have these patterns, but what can we do about it? The first step, obviously, like anything, is to have an awareness of it. Once we're aware of our listening styles and what we do and what we don't do, I mean, for me, I'm a very bad interrupting listener at times, and I've really got to zip my mouth, shut up, and actually sit there and listen to my clients. That's one of the things that I work on all the time. Okay, so what's next? So Oscar Trimboli's solutions to this, he's got 5 steps. He talks about deep listening. So what's the first step about readying yourself? This is about taking a deep breath before you pick up the phone. Be aware of how you're feeling, or you're getting on a Zoom call or whatever you're doing. Be aware of where your headspace is at. Are you full of all this stuff that's been going on? Often if you've got a C style yourself, you may have been pulled out of a job you're really deeply into and you've got to answer the phone, so you're sort of struggling to get your head in the right spot. So take a couple of big deep breaths, get your headspace in the right space, and because if you're not there, this will impact the first words that you say and how you say them, and the person that you're speaking to will probably pick that up. The next stage is to listen to the content of what's being said. And I'm talking about being truly available and present. Be aware of the listening fails that we just talked about, the page before, and actually listen to what's being asked or said to you. It's a good idea sometimes if you need to take notes and clarify. Make sure that you clarify so that you're clear on what they're looking for, and it's about their content. It's not about your content, what you think you heard. It's got to be theirs. Think about the context of the conversation. So what's happening at the time? A lot of the conversations that you're having at the moment, and I'm sure you're thoroughly aware of this, is about the whole JobKeeper situation and what examples people are needing, or what information people are needing to know. Where do we register? Are you going to register? Am I going to register myself? Who's eligible? How can we prove we're going to be eligible? And this is everybody from big businesses all the way through down to self-employed sole traders. It's a pretty scary time. So why are they asking this question? What is it that they need? What's important for them to need now? What are the time frames that are urgent and coming up? And what do you need to know that you need to do now? And then what can be done in a couple of days' time, next week or the week after, or whatever that is. What can you ask to get things clearer? This also helps put into perspective what's important, what's urgent, and what you need to deal with, like I just said. Okay, so listen to what isn't being said or hasn't been said. Our mouths can generally only speak 125 words a minute, generally. But our brain speed works at 3 or 4 times that. So often what's happening is people will be rushing ahead, especially if they've got lots of things on their mind, lots of questions, lots of issues, lots of concerns. They'll be saying one thing and they'll think that they've asked you a question, or they'll think they've given you the information, but their brain is rushing on, rushing on. So it's a really good idea to stop afterwards and go, is there anything that else you need to tell me? And reflect back to them what you've heard, what they've asked you, so that they can go, oh, that's right, I forgot this, or oh yeah, I needed to talk to you about that, or get more information out. And then that means that you can then deal with the whole situation. Just be aware, if we tie that back to the type of person that we were talking about before, that personality profile style, whatever, the S style, if they're slower paced and you're trying to rush them through and they're trying to tell you everything that they need to, but they don't want to waste your time, that's where that disconnect and that conflict and that frustration can happen. And that's either from your side or from theirs. And, excuse me, the last piece of this is listen for the meaning. And that is, what's really concerning them? What's behind the whole thing about this? Are they just wanting a chat? Are they scared that their business is not going to be able to be sustainable, or their ability to pay their staff or their bills is not working? By listening for the meaning and putting all those other 4 points together before, it really can open up a wider conversation and maybe lead you to some other options, because maybe you're not the right person to answer all of their questions at that time, but there's other people that can be helpful to them as well. And can you imagine that if you're really listening, and I'm sure if you stop and reflect on that for a second, you'll be very clear on when people are actually listening to you and when they're actually not listening to you. Excuse me. Okay. So, for the sake of time, I've got a couple more slides to go. So the next piece that goes on from listening, and we started talking about a little bit, is to ask smart questions. So this is what I also call high gain questions. If you ask smart or high gain questions, and again, if you're similar to your KPI word, smart, that is specific questions, measurable, when do you need this done by, actionable, yes, I can do this, or who do you need, or who do you want to help you with this? Realistic, is this realistic? Is the time frame realistic? Are we actually going to be able to get it done by when they're asking you to? And that whole time bound thing, as I mentioned. So if you can tie in asking smart questions or high gain questions to get you the information that you need to be able to let you be more effective in answering that client's needs, then that again should help defuse some of these difficult conversations that you're having, or that you may be experiencing, or that you're worried about experiencing. Alrighty, the last piece of this is setting realistic expectations. How might this happen? This is for when you are and are not at work. A lot of you are working from home, I'm sure, and this could mean that apart from your personal boundaries, your workday could really end up stretching out. And if you're sending your clients or peers emails late at night, then they might go, oh my God, I'm so worried about this. And I know that Katie or Joanne or Colin or Cherie are awake because they just sent me an email. I'm going to ring them and ask them a question. So it's really important that you set your boundaries, because if you don't, you're going to actually end up you teach what you allow. So they'll continue to do that. They'll continue to expect it. It will become their new norm. And then when you try and put boundaries in afterwards, then that's when things fall flat and your clients feel disappointed or upset because you've allowed it in the first place. So it's really important to set boundaries. Now, if you think there's a genuine need for your clients to, and it's realistic based on their work type or their business, to ask questions early in the morning or late in the evening, then you need to talk about that in the business and set some potentially out of hours support structures in place to allow that to happen, especially during times like this. But that's something you guys need to work on. Determine what you can control and what they can control. This comes back to the Treasury, the ATO, the Fair Work, the banks, the government. Everybody's changing the information that's coming out all the time. And there's nothing worse. A couple of my clients have said it's so embarrassing, especially in professional service. They get asked a question, they send them off this link, this big long email, and then half an hour later a new piece of information comes in and they go, oh my God, that just completely negates 2 or 3 things that I've just said to my client. How embarrassing. What am I going to do about that? So it's really important for you at this stage to set the expectation up front by stating this is right as we know it right now, but as we know, things can change. So set that expectation up. And then that will actually leave the door open for you to go back and have to adjust and amend the information that you're delivering. Be aware of over-promising, as this can lead to under-delivering. Consider what other resources may be need to put in place to support the work that's needing to be done. Who else in the team can you get involved to help? Who can you upskill? Who can you actually use as a subject matter expert, as we talked about? What additional technology or systems can be used to automate or manage workflow more effectively? New technology is coming out daily, as we know, and it just seems every time I click on my computer, there's more stuff that's being offered to me, which can be a challenge in its own situation. But it's about continuing to leverage your workmates. You've got a broad DFK network, as I understand it, and there's probably other people that are already confronting these challenges that you've got, so use that. And the other thing is, the last point here, communicate frequently, both internally and externally with your clients. The more you put out there, or you put up on your website, or you offer to people, it's up to them then to choose to read the information then or later. Find different ways of communicating it, whether it's by emails, whether it's by newsletters, whether it's by things like webinars, phone calls, proactively giving phone calls rather than reactively waiting for people to ring you. So if you are proactive in ringing your clients and you've got it planned what you need to tell them, even if it's an update, everybody will feel more happy and more relaxed. The other thing is you can never please everybody all the time. But if you ask them for feedback, rather than waiting for complaints, this can help you again further refine your practices to respond. So that was my last slide. I think it's pretty much, 1 minute past, I think. That's pretty good. So time has flown. You've obviously got to go back to work and face some difficult conversations. But for those of you that can remain, if we've got some questions, I'm really happy to answer those. But I hope all of you have been able to pick up at least 1 or 2 thoughts or ideas from this mini masterclass and help you feel better about the fact that you can't fix everybody's problems, but as long as you do your best, you might find that you're more relaxed about the interactions that you're having as well as your clients will. Thank you. Ange, are there any questions for me?
Thank you, Jo. No, there's none in the chat box. I've been watching lots of people taking notes, so you've obviously hit a nerve. Now, so thank you so much for the time that you spent with us. A lot of the things that you've shared here take consideration. So in terms of recognising that there's some behavioural changes that you may need to enact to actually make handling these difficult conversations easier. They're never easy. Our goal is to make them easier. And I will, as I mentioned, I'll be sending out the summary, which you'll be able to refer back to, and also a recording as well, so you can re-listen. But whilst we've still got a good number of people on the line, are there any questions, a specific scenario that you might like some insight on, or anything that you'd like to extend a little more? Feel free to unmute yourselves now and take advantage of Jo's expertise sitting and waiting for you at the moment. I'm just watching down the line to see if there's anyone that's unmuting. Or are we complete?
I think one of the things that's really important is to recognise that, that we aren't, we're all in this together. I'm sure you're as tired of that phrase as I am, but it is true, and it is really about leveraging each other's experience and knowledge, and not being afraid to ask for help and input, because it is all about recognising that the pressures are more serious or severe or impactful now than they normally are, and that it's okay to ask for help, even though it may be a little bit against our natural style at times.
Absolutely. And I guess the last point that I'd like to make before we finish up on this call is that the skills that you learn here of handling difficult conversations are extremely important right now with the tension that's in the air, but it is a skill as someone who is a business owner or working in a business and dealing with clients that will stand you in good stead forever. So this is a skill that you really want to develop for longer term growth as well. And so take action after this call. Just pick 1 or 2 pieces where you can see that there is a growth edge for you, and commit to putting those into action, and that'll make a significant difference in the quality of those conversations. So keep an eye out for our email. Enjoy the next conversation that you have with this little bit more insight that will make it more easeful for you. And feel free to reply to the email that comes through with any questions you may have, because Jo will be happy to connect with you and go deeper into this subject.
Yeah,
so if there aren't
absolutely.
any other questions, we will end this particular workshop. The next one that's happening, the next masterclass, is in 2 days' time, and it's for people that are juggling homeschooling with their kids, and some very interesting skills that you can develop there as well if you are a parent, whether it is right now or down the line. So thank you everybody for your time and attention, and we will see you on our next call. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.